Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we have a special treat in store for hardware enthusiasts and open source enthusiasts alike. We're going to install Pisi Linux 2.4.3 on a ThinkPad T420s. The ThinkPad T420s is one of the most popular entry-level laptops in the Linux community. This slimmed-down version of the classic T420 series was released in 2011, featuring an Intel Core i5-2520M dual-core, quad-thread Sandy Bridge processor, 8GB of DDR3 RAM, and a standard 120GB SATA SSD. It is a beautifully crafted piece of hardware, renowned for having one of the finest laptop keyboards ever made. However, by 2026, running a modern operating system on it is no easy feat. Windows 10 is nearing the end of its support cycle. Windows 11 has completely ceased official support for this generation of CPUs, and mainstream Linux distributions can sometimes feel bloated on dual-core machines. If you've never heard of Pisi Linux, don't worry. You're not alone. For those unfamiliar with it, Pisi Linux is an independent GNU Linux distribution originating from Turkey, not a derivative version. Pisi's origins can be traced back to the highly acclaimed Pardus Linux, particularly the 2011 release of that distribution. When Pardus migrated its infrastructure to the Debian platform, an enthusiastic community took up its original vision and, building upon this, gave birth to Pisi Linux. Pisi was written entirely from scratch. It does not rely on Debian, nor on Red Hat, nor is it a clone of Arch. It uses its own unique package management system, Pisi, which employs XML package descriptions and is primarily written in Python. The name Pisi comes from the Turkish word for kitten. It sounds absolutely adorable, but it also stands for Packages Installed Successfully as Intended, a clever nod to its unique package management system. The latest version of Pisi is 2.4.3, codenamed Karagül, which means black rose in Turkish. It features the latest KDE Plasma 6 desktop environment, offering users a modern, efficient, and visually stunning experience. Over the next few minutes, I'll be guiding you through installing Pisi Linux from scratch on this ThinkPad T420s. This is a real installation, with real hardware and real-world usage. This is a complete live installation and exploration video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Right then, let's get started. Before we begin the installation, let's make sure we have everything we need. Think of this as our pre-flight checklist. Firstly, your ThinkPad T420s. Ensure it is fully charged, or ideally keep it plugged in throughout the process. Secondly, a USB drive with at least 8GB of storage. This will serve as our installation medium. Third, a reliable internet connection. We'll need this to download the ISO file for Pisi Linux. Fourth, download the Pisi Linux ISO on another computer and create a bootable USB drive. Finally, if you have any important data on your ThinkPad T420s hard drive, please back it up immediately. Once you've got all these items ready, we can move on to the next step. The first step is to obtain the Pisi Linux ISO file. For this step, you will need a working computer with an internet connection. Open your web browser, search for Pisi Linux on Google, and visit the official Pisi Linux website. At the top of the homepage, you will see a navigation bar. Click on Download. On the Pisi Linux download page, you will usually see two versions, Minimal and Karagül. We need the Karagül version. Please select the mirror server that best suits your location. Then click the download link, and the file will start downloading automatically. The ISO file is approximately 3.6 GB in size, so please be patient. Whilst it is downloading, you might want to have a cup of coffee or check the BIOS settings on your ThinkPad T420s. Once downloaded, it is advisable to verify the integrity of the ISO file using an MD5 or SHA-256 checksum. This ensures the file has not been corrupted during the download. Instructions for this are usually provided alongside the Pisi Linux download link. Next, we need to convert the ISO file into a bootable USB drive. We will use a tool called Balena Etcher to write the ISO file to the USB drive. Balena Etcher is a free, open-source program that supports Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. It is arguably the simplest way to create a bootable Linux USB drive, and I recommend it to anyone who is not familiar with command line tools. Please download and install Etcher on your current computer. Once you have downloaded the Pisi Linux ISO file and installed Etcher, insert your USB stick. When you open Etcher, the interface is very straightforward. 3 steps will be displayed on the screen. Step 1. Flash from file. Click this button, locate the folder where you saved the Pisi Linux ISO file, and select it. Step 2. Select the target. Insert the USB stick into your computer, then click Select Target. Etcher will display the available drives. Be very careful to select your USB stick and not any other drive. Etcher helpfully labels the drives, showing their capacity and name, which helps to avoid selecting the wrong one. However, you should still check carefully. Step 3. Flash. Once you have confirmed the ISO file and the target drive, click the Flash button. Etcher will ask you to enter administrator or sudo credentials. This is normal, as writing to the drive requires higher privileges. Enter your password and confirm. This process may take a few minutes, depending on the speed of your USB stick. You will see a progress bar. Please do not remove the USB stick or close the Etcher program whilst this is in progress. Once the writing is complete, Etcher will automatically run a verification step, reading the contents just written to ensure they match the source file. This serves as another effective integrity check. Upon completion, you will receive a confirmation message. Do not format the USB drive once this is finished. Simply eject it safely. Once the Pisi Linux bootable USB drive has been created, insert it into the ThinkPad T420s. Switch on the ThinkPad T420s, then immediately press the F1 key repeatedly to enter the BIOS utility settings. In the BIOS, use the right arrow key to navigate to the Startup tab. First, press the F9 key to restore the default settings, then press Enter to confirm. Next, we set the UEFI legacy boot option to UEFI only. Finally, we press the F10 key to save and exit, then press Enter to confirm. The ThinkPad T420s will now restart. When we see the ThinkPad boot screen again, we press the F12 key to enter the boot menu. In the boot menu, we select to boot from the USB HDD and press Enter to confirm the selection. Our ThinkPad T420s laptop will boot the fully featured Pisi Linux live desktop directly from a USB drive. It runs entirely from the USB drive without accessing our internal hard drive. Even on older hardware such as the ThinkPad T420s, Pisi Linux boots up quite quickly. It took about 50 seconds before we were greeted by Pisi Linux's attractive live desktop. This live desktop in Pisi Linux 2, 4.3 Karagül is very clean and minimalist, featuring a dark theme that looks quite elegant. The bottom panel includes the taskbar, system tray, and application launcher. The default wallpaper typically features a dark rose pattern that echoes the name Karagül. It is fast and efficient, making it ideal for older hardware such as the ThinkPad T420s. In this Pisi Linux live desktop environment, you can test whether all the hardware on your ThinkPad T420s is working properly. For example, Wi-Fi, audio, the touchpad, keyboard, and USB ports. This is your chance to identify any compatibility issues before installation. You can also use the live environment to access your existing drives. If you haven't wiped the data, you can copy any files you need, although you should have backed them up already. In the Pisi Linux live desktop environment, you can also test or try out the operating system's various features. All of this ensures that Pisi Linux is compatible with your ThinkPad T420s hardware before installation. If the tests are successful, we can begin the installation. On the Pisi Linux Live desktop, you should see an icon labeled Install Pisi Linux or something similar. Double-click it to launch the installer. The Pisi Linux installer is based on the Yali framework. Yali stands for Yet Another Linux Installer, which is a highly intuitive, user-friendly, and powerful installer that will guide us step by step through the entire installation process. Step 1. Set your preferred language. Usually, your preferred language is set as the default, but you can scroll through the list and select any language you prefer. Here, I have chosen English. Click Next to continue. Step 2. Read and accept the free open source license terms. Before installing Pisi Linux on our computer, we need to read and accept the free open source license terms for the software included on this installation medium. Click Next to continue. Step 3. Set your keyboard layout. Scroll through the list to select your keyboard layout. You can also test the layout in the text box provided. Here I have selected the English keyboard layout, so unless you use a different layout, please select this one. Click Next to continue. Step 4. Set the date and time. Select your country and city from the drop-down menu. This will set your location and time zone, ensuring that the clock is always accurate. Click Next to continue. Step 5. Set up our user account. Enter our name, username, and password. Be sure to remember the password, as you will need it to log into the system and perform administrative tasks in future. Click Next to continue. Step 6. Set the administration password and hostname, and enter our administration password and the computer name we wish to use. Click Next to continue. Step 7. Select the installation location for Pisi Linux. Click Next to continue. Step 8. Select the partitioning method. Here we have chosen Use All Disk. Click Next to continue. Step 9. Configure the bootloader. Here I have selected the default settings. Click Next to continue. Step 10. Review the summary of our installation plan. The installer now displays a complete summary of all the operations that are about to be performed, including our chosen keyboard layout, date and time, user details, host information, partition settings, and bootloader settings. Please read this carefully. If there are any errors, use the back button to correct them. If you are satisfied with everything, click Start Installation. Yali reminds us that the partition scheme we have selected will now be written to the disk. All data on partitions that have been deleted or formatted will be lost. Click Write Changes to Disk to continue. Click Start Installation again, and the system will begin the installation. Step 11. The system begins installation. During this time, the installer will copy files, install the system, and configure everything. The installer will copy files from the USB stick to the hard drive, install the bootloader, and configure the system. On this ThinkPad T420s laptop, the Pisi Linux installation process actually took about 8 minutes. During this time, you'll see a progress bar and various messages explaining what is happening at each stage, as well as slides about Pisi Linux. You do not need to do anything at this stage. Step 12. Installation complete. The installer informs us that Pisi Linux has been installed. We can now choose to reboot into the new system, or continue using the Pisi Linux live environment. Now, click Yes to restart the computer and apply the new operating system. Once the screen goes black during the restart, you must remove the USB installation media. This is crucial to ensure your ThinkPad T420s does not attempt to boot from the USB again. After the machine has restarted, we will briefly see the ThinkPad logo, followed by the Gun Grub menu counting down. This will boot us into the freshly installed Pisi Linux. The system begins to load. You will see some text scrolling across the screen, and then the login screen. Enter your username and password, then press Enter. Welcome to your freshly installed Pisi Linux 2.4.3, Karagül. Now let's take a moment to look around. The taskbar is at the bottom. You'll see the application menu on the left, the taskbar displaying running applications in the middle, and the system tray on the right, which contains the clock, network, volume, and other indicators. The desktop should run very smoothly, especially on an SSD. The KDE Plasma desktop environment is feature-rich yet surprisingly lightweight. On a T420s equipped with an SSD and 8 GB of RAM, it should be very responsive. A machine that may have been running slowly due to years of Windows updates is now running a clean, efficient, and modern Linux system. The desktop should load quickly, icons should be crisp and clear, and everything should be responsive. By the time you watch this video, I will have been thoroughly testing Pisi Linux on this ThinkPad T420s for over 2 weeks. So, what do I think? I find it refreshing. It isn't perfect. After all, no Linux distribution is perfect. But it really is refreshing. It gives a sense of independence. It stands out from the crowd and has a clear purpose. The system performs quite well on older hardware. The desktop environment remains highly user-friendly, and the overall user experience feels very smooth and seamless, and perhaps most importantly, it feels as though it has been created by a group of people who still care deeply about desktop Linux and view it as a meaningful computing experience. This is crucial, because nowadays, more and more operating systems seem to be primarily driven by so-called ecosystem strategies, data collection, cloud integration, and platform lock-in. In contrast, projects like Pisi Linux remain deeply rooted in the philosophy that personal computing ought to return to its personal essence. Combining this philosophy with an old ThinkPad has produced a surprisingly satisfying synergy. The ThinkPad T420s remains relevant to this day. It still offers decent performance and is full of character. Meanwhile, Linux continues to extend the life cycle of those old devices that have already been abandoned by mainstream tech culture. For this reason alone, projects like Pisi Linux are truly invaluable. Right then, everyone, I think that brings today's journey to an end. We've installed Pisi Linux 2.4.3 Karagül on a ThinkPad T420s. We've had a quick look around the system. To be honest, I hope videos like this will encourage you to give it a go. Perhaps you have an old laptop gathering dust in a storeroom, a forgotten ThinkPad, an aging Dell, or an old machine that still works but feels left behind by modern software. Try installing Linux on it. Not because Linux is flawless, nor because old hardware will magically become modern again, but because extending the life of technology brings a real sense of satisfaction. Perhaps more importantly, understanding the tools you use brings a sense of fulfillment. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like or leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow, and I read every single comment. If you have any questions, please leave them below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.